So, unfortunately, I woke to the news that indeed the Tories had taken Hartlepool. And as I've been saying for the past couple of days, I did think that was a very real opportunity. I was very much of the opinion that this was either going to be a close race or not at all. And it turned out that this was not a close race. Indeed, I think the Conservative candidate had a majority of about close to about 7,000 votes. So that is quite a very clear, comfortable majority. However, I have expressed this opinion before, and I am not the only one in expressing this opinion, in that a lot of these, shall we say, former Labour voters who have now voted Tories, they are now sitting waitingly expecting their just reward. They haven't voted Tory to see Brexit done. They voted Tory because they now want their pay. They want their pound of flesh. They now want that North investment that they've been so much wanting for and desire for. And indeed, what we're going to get into in the article later on, they do say that a lot of people are very enthusiastic about the announcement of the free port just north of Hartlepool. However, we've discussed before that these free ports aren't necessarily going to be good for the area. Indeed, you may see businesses move to this free port area just to get, off paying extra tax. And this won't add new jobs to the area. It will just mean jobs moving. And again, this will be quite bad. And again, we've gone over before how bad the economic consequences just are for free ports. And again, if the Tories were so adamant that free ports were a good thing, remember, they've been in power quite a while, well before since 2016. So why didn't they do free ports? Because they could have if they wanted to. Again, a quote-unquote Brexit benefit that is being sold as one that wasn't quite so. So today I thought, let's not go into proper electoral analysis today. I've got a really good article from the North East Bylines today of someone who is local to that area and explaining what they feel and what they see as a local to the area, what they see as went on. So I think it's quite important to really get their opinion on this. So before we do jump into that, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And like I say, thank you to everyone who does support the channel, either the links down below or just pressing the like, share and subscribe button. So, like I say, this does come from the North East Bylines. And of course, the title is "The Tories Take Hartlepool." So the Tories have won a historic victory. Labour's once unshakable dominance in Hartlepool is at an end for now. And the Tories really are at the gates of Rome, in a sense. It was always going to be a lose-lose for Labour. They were never ever going to win with a decisive majority, and slipping past the post by a few hundred votes would have not have provided any credible sign of their fortunes were recovering. While the Tories are celebrating, Labour may have to do some serious soul searching. And there are a certain Tories for whom the victory in Hartlepool is very particularly sweet. Among them are those at the central office whose policy for allocating candidates from central casting to stand-in by-elections has been thoroughly vindicated. Despite all the rhetoric about the need for local people to represent the town, the apparent resentment of when it doesn't happen, the most unlikely parachute candidate has actually prevailed: Jill Mortimer, a Yorkshire farmer and Shire Tory to the core. Boris Johnson also is breathing a sigh of relief. Those who have been telling him that the furore over his sleaze is just a storm in the teacup in Westminster bubble were right all along. And today, he is Teflon Johnson once again. For days now, the town cemeteries have been full of people turning in their graves as their descendants revoke all that they stood for, an act of what has been accomplished with much wringing of hands. But the deed is done. The priorities of people in Hartlepool have changed and there is no going back. One key question remains, however. That's the question of what precisely the Tories have just acquired. An upset election like this is a bit like buying something at an auction. You don't get the chance to actually have a real good look at it until you get home. One thing that is unlikely is that the vote represents any notion that Hartlepool's electorate in any way identifies with Jill Mortimer. Put more broadly, there is no sense in which this vote is an expression for support for the values of traditional Shire Tories. Equally, people in Hartlepool do have televisions and smartphones, and they really have heard the accusations of sleaze being made against Johnson and his government. And it is not unreasonable to expect that many of them believe the allegations are true. They have also noticed that the various governments' levelling up funds have been generously allocated elsewhere. Very little has actually arrived in Hartlepool. What they have shown in this election is that they are prepared to put all those things aside and support Johnson's government. To explain this in terms of Brexit is all too obvious. The town in which 69% of voters supported Brexit in 2016 now supports the party that, quote, got Brexit done, as they essentially already did in the 2019 election when their vote was divided between a Tory and a Brexit Party candidate. Labour won that election pretty much by default. But things have changed significantly since 2016 and even since 2019. And that expectation has been created. In 2016, Hartlepool voted overwhelmingly to upset the status quo when it overwhelmingly endorsed Brexit. But in doing so, people had no expectation of any material change actually on their own doorstep. Brexit appeared to be a fairly abstract set of values in material terms. When investment is drawn to the southeast, the northeast is largely neglected. That imbalance is largely now out of sight. How many people in this region know that investment in transport infrastructure per head in the southeast is 6 times what it is in the northeast? But when economic benefits start to appear in Middlesbrough, Stockton and Darlington and Rishi Sunak's Richmond constituency, that is when Hartlepool being left out becomes clearly visible. When I recently interviewed the independent by-election candidates Sam Lee and Adam Gaines, both were of the view that the awarded Freeport status in the Tees Valley would directly affect Middlesbrough, but as things stand, would also have much less impact on Hartlepool. Adam Gaines remarked that the port of Hartlepool had been added as an afterthought and would see no significant increase in activity. Sam Lee, who is very enthusiastic about the Freeport, talks of Hartlepool picking up the overflow of businesses who are attracted to the region after the sites in Middlesbrough are filled up. Sam Lee summed up the mood in Hartlepool when he said, quote, "We deserve our money. This is a mood of defiance and demand that now prevails." So, what is new to Hartlepool is the view that the town is now entitled to some benefit from the new economic playing field, and if the only way to get it is to make a Faustian pact with Johnson and his government, then so be it. This victory is not an expression of shared values, it is a transaction. People are prepared to ignore all of Johnson's transgressions so long as he delivers on that. So the Conservatives have now firmly a party of two constituencies. Welcome Hartlepool into the fold. The cash register will now open shortly. And that is very interesting. I think if you take that to heart, that if that really is the prevailing feeling in the town, that okay, we've now voted Tory, time to open the register, that's very interesting, because obviously we know full well, given the Tory ideology, the whole levelling up thing is giving money, but it's nowhere near enough that these towns actually need. We've seen how, again, Rishi Sunak, with the levelling up money, has been allocated to his own constituency that doesn't even need it. And we've talked about that before. And of course, we obviously need to start really thinking about how policies are going to attract these, these people who have switched their votes back to Labour. That's something that the Labour Party is really going to have to do, and there is going to have to be a lot of soul searching. But if indeed this is now the prevailing view in Hartlepool, that, well, okay, we'll make this deal, but now you've got to deliver on your end. Like I say, the idea of levelling up and global Britain are in two opposites of each other. Neither can survive without undermining the other. And once again, two sides in the Tory party are going to go to war, and it is not going to be messy, because we saw how messy it got during the 2016 referendum over essentially what was a dispute between the Tories about how much regulation there should be in the UK's market. So as a result, we're going to have to see what goes on from here. But nevertheless, I think the prevailing view of, we've kept our part of the bargain, now it's your time to keep yours. How long will that feeling last? How long will that acceptance of, voting Conservative without seeing substantial gains actually last? Because again, that's what was promised at Brexit by a lot of these Brexiteers, that they would now start to pay attention to the North. And yet, as someone living in the North, they haven't really paid all that too much attention. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link as well. And as always, thank you so much to the people who support me that way. And as always, we'll see you all next time.